Welcome everyone, it's Evelyn. I have some special information for you this morning. I woke up this morning and was immediately guided to a few books that I haven't touched in years. And I was guided to open a page from each book, which I'm going to read to you. I haven't really read through the 2 pages from the book, but when I'm glancing at them now, I realize the connection to the downloads that I got after that, which I'm also going to present to you. So please stay tuned, it's pretty profound. I think I'm going to call my singing bowl and my bells Metatron and Michael. So the bowl will be Metatron, and my little bells. Take a deep breath, Michael. Okay. So the first book that I opened a page to was Edgar Cayce on reincarnation. And it opened to page 167, which I did look up in Gematria as well. So I'm going to give you that information as well. And the page that I opened to was the section on Pythagoras and Plato. So I'm going to read you from 166 to 167. So the views on Pythagoras exist only in his biographies by Diogenes Laertius and Iamblichus. I'm terrible at these names. Okay. But the former quotes him as asserting that he had received the memory of all his soul's transmigrations as a gift from Mercury. Note Mercury, because that was important today, along with the gift of recollecting what his own soul and the souls of others had experienced between death and rebirth. From Plato, 427 to 347 BC, we can obtain direct context. Soul is older than body. Souls are continuously born over again into this life. The soul of the true philosopher abstains as much as possible from pleasures and desires, griefs and fears, for in consequence, note consequence, that comes up today too, of its forming the same opinions as the body and delighting in the same things, it can never pass into Hades in a pure state, but must ever depart polluted by the body, and so quickly falls into another body, and consequently is deprived of all association with that which is divine and pure and uniform. Know that if you become worse, you will go to the worse souls, and if better, to the better souls. And in every succession of life and death, you will do and suffer what like must fitly suffer at the hands of like. You will do and suffer what like must fitly suffer at the hands of like. It should also be established here that Saint Jerome once impulsively hailed Origen as the greatest teacher of the Church since the Apostles. This is hardly plausible if the New Testament was then as ambiguous in its references to reincarnation then as ambiguous as it is now. Ambiguous in its references to reincarnation as it is now. Surely Origin, to have held pride of place among the early church fathers for nearly 4 centuries, his tenets must have been based solidly on what at that time were accepted as the true gospels. Sorry, having trouble getting words out of my mouth. Saint Clement of Alexandria, in his exhortation of the pagans, is also clearly influenced by Plato. We were in being long before the foundation of the world. We existed in the eye of God, for it is our destiny to live in him. We are the reasonable creatures of the divine word. Therefore we have existed from the beginning. For in the beginning was the Word. Not for the first time does he show pity on us in our wanderings. He pitied us from the very beginning. To Saint Jerome's and Saint Augustine's view on Plato must be added those of Saint Gregory, who affirmed that it is absolutely necessary that the soul should be healed and purified, and if this does not take place during its lifetime on earth, it must be accomplished in future lives. Saint Augustine held Plato in such veneration that he writes in his Contra Academicos, the message of Plato, the purest and the most luminous of all philosophy, has at last scattered the darkness of error and now shines forth mainly in Plotinus, a Platonist so like his master that one would think they lived together, or rather, since so long a period of time separates them, that Plato was born again in Plotinus. To come full circle, Plotinus, or Plotinus, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, was a fellow disciple with Origen under Ammonius. And it was funny because ammonia came up for me today too, who founded the famous Alexandrian school of Neoplatonism or Platonism in Egypt in 193 AD. Plotinus in the Descent of the Soul is perhaps the most articulate and expressive. Thus the soul, through the divine origin, having proceeded from the regions on high, become merged in the dark receptacle of the body, and being naturally a post-diluvial god, it descends hither through a certain voluntary inclination for the sake of power and of adorning inferior concerns. Yet our souls are able alternately to rise from hence, carrying back with them an experience of what they have known and suffered in their fallen state, from whence they will learn how blessed it is to abide in the intelligible world, and by a comparison of contraries will more plainly perceive the excellence of a superior state. For the experience of evil produces a clearer knowledge of good. The whole of our soul does not enter the body, but something belonging to it always abides in the intelligible world, which is something different from this sensible world, and that which abides in this world of sense does not permit us to perceive that which the supreme part of the soul contemplates. Hence we have the testimony of 4 saints of the early church. They cannot all have had bats in the belfry, nor would they have embraced beliefs that were hostile to the contemporary tenets of their own church. The fact that they repeatedly adhere to Christian, quote-unquote, dogmas of Plato indicates their conviction that Christ had included those same dogmas in his own philosophy. Exactly when did these original versions of the Gospels undergo such drastic reinterpretations? In all the research material that is reasonably available, there is not one source which can supply a clear-cut, substantiated answer, and only the Catholic Encyclopedia even hints at one. Okay, so this is what came up from Edgar Cayce on reincarnation. Then I opened the 7 Spiritual Laws for Parents by Deepak Chopra, and that opened up to page 40 and 41, which ends in 42. So I'm going to read you that. And this section that came up here was early teens, 12 to 15 years old, and the key words self-awareness, experimentation, and responsibility. Childhood ends with early adolescence. Traditionally and trying and difficult time. For children, innocence suddenly runs into puberty and the arrival of needs that parents no longer fill. For parents, the realization dawns that they must let go of their children and trust that they are capable of dealing with a world of responsibility and pressures that the parents themselves may have barely learned to adjust without insecurity. What is critical is that by now the lessons of childhood have borne either sweet or bitter fruit. The child who can go forth, imprinted with genuine spiritual knowledge, will reflect her parents' pride and trust. The child who stumbles into confusion, reckless experimentation, and peer pressure is likewise reflecting the hidden confusion of his upbringing. Adolescence is notoriously a time of self-consciousness, but it can also be a time of self-awareness. Experimentation is a natural part of the transition from childhood, but it doesn't have to be reckless and destructive. Now, the issue is whether the child has an inner self that can be used as a guide. This inner self is the silent voice that has the power to choose between right and wrong based upon a deep knowingness about life. This knowingness is not confined to any age. A newborn baby has it as fully as a mature adult. The difference is that the mature adult has cultivated behavior that follows the inner guide. If you've taught your child to heed her own silence, there's no peril in letting her go out into the world no longer a child. In fact, it is a joyful experience, if occasionally a nerve-wracking one, to watch her grow in self-awareness by experimenting with the vast array of choices that life has to offer. Okay, that's what came up from Deepak Chopra in the 7 spiritual laws for parents. So this is my downloads after that, and that was the first time I read the 2 pages, okay? So I'm up here. I didn't sleep the night before last, so I ended up sleeping late this morning. I woke up at 10:06 after waking up after 7, but I wasn't ready to wake up, obviously. I didn't even realize I'd fallen back to sleep again. And I'm in the kitchen getting my juice that I have every morning, the juice mix that I do, and my decaf of all milk. And I was getting the expression of love and light. So I had been given some downloads recently about this expression, and then it was prompted again yesterday by something that I had heard. So I found those 2 books because I was looking for my Atlantis book, but I couldn't find it because it might be in another room, but I haven't looked yet. But I was guided to these 2 books to read to you. So after I opened that to 167, I noted just the phrase "to come full circle," and that was under 205 to 270, the time period. And then ammonia came up, I had noticed, I told you, because I remember I had spelled it incorrectly with 1 M, and my boss had corrected me on it, so there's a reason that was coming up here. And I may not be sure what that is yet, but let's just go with that. Okay, so I did my thing and heard something about love and light, and also some energy around that for me was coming up around the magnetic and the electric, so of course I was guided back into my own knowing about that, and the source, the initial flame. So when I heard this information, everyone thinks of source as the head energy, and then it splits into 2. And I was corrected when I wrote that down by Sophia, and I was getting, Sophia, say it soft and it's almost like praying. Sophia, right? But say it loud and there's music playing. All right, so the Sophia, or the feminine energy, was coming up. Say it soft and it's almost like praying. Say it loud and there's music playing. Okay, so this is sound. And then I was getting, see me, feel me, touch me, heal me. So that comes up from Tommy and the Who, and Major Tom comes up. And then I opened the pages to Deepak Chopra. I wrote that down later at 40 to 41, but I'm going to give you the gematria from that because that's important too. So here we have the masculine coming up as Tommy, and the feminine coming up as Sophia, and the sound and the light as opposed to the love and light. And so when I opened up the pages of the gematria, in the first one for Edgar Casey was the number 1 thing that came up under number 167 was Mike Pence. And when I did it again under Mike Pence, it was Venus, and then again Venus. So very much Venus, right? The planet of love. The second one was Barbara. And the third one was, it was PTCD, but I was getting PTSD of the Divine Feminine. PTCD is PT of the Christ, and PTSD is the PTSD of the Sophia. That's what they were giving me. So this is about the wounding of the Divine Feminine. And the fourth one that came up was Think, and I was getting Think Tank when that came up. And then the fifth was Gloria, and the sixth one was Ship. And right there, my son had said that it was nice outside. And I had told him, he said it was getting cool. And I reminded him about Indian summer. And he said cool, and I said no, hot, just being funny, okay? But this was just the play between the masculine and feminine coming up. And Indian summer came up, but also, again, the Indian mulberry came up, so that was significant. When I looked up the number for the Deepak Chopra book, which is page 40 and 41 came up, 40 came up as the capital letter N, which for me is code Christ. The second thing that came up was I am. The third thing that came up was life. Under number 41 came up number 1, all. Number 2 was Liebe in German, means love or the love of your life. And the third thing was AN. When I looked up Liebe to see where it went to KOBE, KOBE, or Kobe. So this is what came up for those as well. So he hears and speaks to her what she needs and is. She sees and feels him, what he needs and is. Sophia the mother, the ground control of Major Tom, the magnetic with electric on a string, the puppet master, the chord holder, the music of the spheres sending lightning, or Metatron and Michael, thunder and lightning, to do their dirty work and cleanse the atmosphere. Atmosphere, or atmosphere, right? Mo is the leader of the group, right? The masculine female, or ma. Source is love, the merge, the melding, the amygdalin, which can be regarded as some as poison, the amygdalin of the amalgamation, which means an alloy of mercury with another metal. It can be liquid, soft paste, or solid, depending on proportion from en.wikipedia. And it's formed through metallic bonding with electrostatic attractive force of conduction electrons working to bind all positively charged metal ions or connections together into a crystal lattice structure. Almost all metals can form amalgams with mercury. So here, we always hear of mercury as a poisonous substance, and here is amygdalin coming up as poison as well. And so mercury is coming up as the fillings in our teeth that we were told it was bad and we should have them taken out. So the second definition of amalgam is a mixture of different elements, like musical forms. The example was the crowd was an amalgam of young and old. So the alchemical elements came up. I had just drawn them the other day. So I went back to the picture of all of the alchemical elements. And Mercury's drawing was coming up as the crown, or the tooth, the filling of the four chambers of the heart, feeding into other tributaries, the diamond light, making you afraid of your mercury fillings, and thermometers, or thermometers, right, the temperature rising, and normal iodine levels that may naturally reverse or repair damage from heavy metals, lead, mercury, aluminum, and fluoride. If mercury is in tuna and in dolphins, because you shouldn't eat them because they have mercury in them, and dolphins is related to sonar, which was coming up for me. And remember, and they also stated that all medical vaccines are tainted with mercury. If it is a part of us, mercury, and if dolphins, or if it's a part of us and dolphins, and most fish, is it really so bad, right? The mercury, just like amygdalin is in lots of foods we eat. It's that little bit of poison, which I've already talked about on my video before, which is activated by the cancer cells, not really so much I'm blanking out on the word. The human, when I brought up amygdalin before, the human body doesn't break it down, the molecule that has the poison in it, the cancer cell does. So it's like and besides, the human body can take care of a certain amount and flush it through its body anyway. So the molecule is safe for the human body unless there's cancer in it, and then the cancer has the ability to then break open the molecule that has the poison in it, and then the poison thus kills the cancer. So if it's a part of us, and it doesn't have to just be mercury, it can be or amygdalin, anything that's bad for us. If it's a part of us already, right, just like getting too much of something that's already in our human body, and it's part of dolphins, and I was getting connected to sonar, radar, right? So that sonar system, is it really so bad for us? And then in the elements of the alchemist, or alchemy, the three heavenly substances are listed as sulfur, salt, and mercury. So if they're the alchemist's three heavenly substances, are they really so bad? And that was coming up at 1144. So also the Indian mulberry was coming up because in the word alchemy, AL, one of the definitions is the Indian mulberry, which came up under another acronym the other day, Indian mulberry, which they make dye from. So when I broke down Indian here, I was getting in, dye, and then AN. In dye, which references to, but it also references color and death, or transition, transformation. In dye, and then AN is the human circle with the tail, which is connection, the human connection to the N. The little n is Jesus for me. So in the two, transforming or coloring our world, the human connection to Jesus. So literally reaching out, the Indian is reaching out to Jesus as a human. Then the mulberry was breaking down as the, berry is the dye, and mull, like mulling it over. So I was getting mull it over and bury the hatch. Okay, so that was the message coming up from alchemy. So then I was guided to the page, theartofunity.com, which tells you all sorts of cure-alls for all of these things that are bad for you. It's an organic site, and I definitely recommend it for those of you who want to check it out. And it was coming up at 11:49, which is again, or 11:59, which is the 11th hour, and I got a scam call right at that moment as I was writing this information down. Because anything that places us into fear, right, the 11th hour, the anticipation, right, so you may want to look at it as excitement as opposed to anxiety or fear or anticipation, but it doesn't matter because either extreme puts your body into that fight or flight state. So this is another tool of fear. Not that the site is wrong or the organic information that they gave you is wrong, it's not. But I'm bringing this up for a reason. So the word alchemy, alchemist, and alchemical process were all coming up for me here. And then they were showing me the salt, and the salt is the circle with the line horizontally through it, which is literally like the pineal gland, right? Because the pie is a circle with the line through it. So salt took me to the pineal gland, which is the pie. And remember that the pineal gland is not the third eye. It's associated with the third eye, but the pineal is the human body part. It gives you the ability to sleep because it produces melatonin, which is especially susceptible to aluminum, okay? So even if you damage your third eye, is that really the worst thing that can happen to you? Because there's so many things that we do to try to heal our third eye. And is it really, and it's not our third eye we're healing, it's the pineal gland. So do we need the pineal gland after a certain point in our evolutionary process, was the question here. So I just told you recently also that I was getting that the third eye is coming up as the pineal is coming up as the third eye, then the fourth eye is the rainbow bridge, but also related to the unicorn coming out the bottom of the head, right at where the head meets the neck, and then the crown, which is literally coming in from the crown straight down the chakra system. So the 3D, 4D, and 5D bridge is correlating to that, the third eye, fourth eye, and fifth eye, or crown, which now they're showing me because the crown and the pineal gland are connected to the third eye. So we have the third eye, fourth eye, and the fifth eye of the crown, which is phi, the PHI, which is the circle with the line expanding outside the lines, which is the expansion, and then the need for us to know how to pull ourselves back to 0 point again. So we're to rise above the third eye, or the pineal gland anyway, to go through the pineal to the crown, to sleep, through the sleep to the waking sleep. And then as I'm breaking down alchemy and alchemist, alkaline's definitely coming up. But remember that alkaline and acidity is the old way of scientific thinking, right? Intelligence. And then we have the alchemical process. And alchemical breaks down as all key, my call. Alchemy, alch, which can reference alkaline. He, my, or alch, he, Michael. All right, so the alch, so I looked up alch to see what definitions came up, but it also references alkaline because alkaline's better for you than base because we need to keep that balance more alkaline than base, so erring to the side of light as opposed to dark. Same thing with alkaline and acidity. But he and Michael were coming up here, so Archangel Michael is definitely coming up here, and of course Mercury and the messenger and the logos of the word. So they wanted me to tell you that pineal, or pi, right, the circle with the line through it, is the salt of the earth. The ability to sleep in 3D and produce melatonin. However, the pineal is not the third chakra, the eye, transcending to the crown, which is then phi, the rising above through the pineal to the crown, through sleep to waking sleep, tuning into the body. It knows what you need. All right. So then I looked up ALK and all the associated definitions with that, and then I went back to alchemist. The alchemist, so alch means cavity or gap or hole to fill with other things, but the alchemist then equals the cavity or the hole or the gap to fill, the hollow echo chamber, the spear in the heart, the mercury in the tooth, the blood, the messy dirty, that which he missed. All right, this is all coming from alchemist. Alch, he missed. So before I go further into that explanation, I was getting the Holy Grail, the cup, right? Because we're talking about the whole, and we always talk about the cup to fill, right? The Holy Grail and filling the cup. So I've been getting, as you all know, if you listen to me regularly, that I get the light and sound as Metatron and Michael, Metatron being the sound and Michael being the light or the lightning and the thunder, Metatron being the thunder or the sound, and also I've been getting the relationship of magnetic to electric, right? So of course the lightning is the masculine and the Archangel Michael coming up on that side, and the feminine comes up as the thunder. You wouldn't think that because you think of the thunder, if Metatron's always coming up as more powerful, that they're above Michael in that element, that would be the masculine. But the Metatron is coming up as the feminine energy, the sound, the Sophia, right? The music of the spheres. And remember that the sound comes before the light, so we can hear the sound before we can see the light. Or we see the light before the sound? Now I can't remember which was which. But it doesn't really matter. But just remember, just like you can't see the entire color spectrum with our human eyes, we can't hear the entire spectrum with our ears either. And remember, today is the 12 of the hangman, and wisdom came up before I even started any of this. So wisdom comes up, which is what Sophia means. And I ended up listing these things right above where I wrote the hanging man and wisdom. All right, so that's associating Sophia. And then the masculine, again, is the lightning and the Christ energy. Okay. I'd also brought up yesterday in the Merkaba, the triangles. In the one triangle coming from Christ, it was coming up here again that the two children that come off the Christ triangle were the feminine character and the masculine of consequence. So this was coming up again, that the magnetic attracts, or attract, the one who tracks of character, and the one who attacks, the electric, attack, or tacky person. So it's really funny. So the one of consequence is the masculine here, and the one of character or of moral character is the feminine energy. Now remember, this isn't about female, male, because we each have masculine and feminine within us, okay? So then the Holy Grail was coming up, and as the Holy Grail was coming up as God's Braille. So I was getting the raised lettering or Morse code, but when I put Braille into my iPad, it changed automatically to brain, right? Braille is not the same as Grail because it's the 3D version, right? So it's God's Braille. Braille in 3D is those raised letters that someone who can't see uses to read. But God's Braille is the Grail. I'm going to read you first what Braille means, not the hearing and deaf version of Braille, but B-R-A-I-L means a small rope to truss sails or to reef. It means a thong, soft leather to bind the hawk's wing, a stalk at each end of the sen to keep stretched, and feathers around a hawk's rump, which came out yesterday. Yesterday in the read about sticking their butt out. And it also means barrel, that he had a barrel. He had us over a barrel. Okay, so the Grail was coming up here, and Braille with God's raised lettering and the Morse code, as well as instead of Grail, then adding instead of B-rail or G-rail, then I was getting D-rail or the train. And then train would be tea and rain, you know, and then Love Rain on Me was coming up in the Who, and the group Train on Me and Rain on Me. So we have Train and the Who coming up, and the Blind Pinball Wizard, okay. And pinball is pin and ball. So my pin, the example I was giving you, the technical drawing, and his ball, the Wizard of Oz, all key me, alchemy, alchemical, all key my call. So the lyrics from Train that came up, did you miss me while you were away, while you were looking for yourself out there, okay? And then the Who comes up again some more, so we're going to get into that more. But remember, alchemy is transmutation, the search for the panacea, the philosopher's stone. Complicated, elaborate transformation process of or algorithm. So then I was getting guided to code breaker, but to spell it with a Q instead of a C. So code breaker to name this video. And then they were taking me into the summary of this. The spear, the serpent, the metal ring, the door knocker, in other words, the wake-up call, the spear in the heart that creates the hole, the gap, the cavity to fill, the hollow echo chamber with mercury in molar as blood in the heart. It's messy and dirty. He missed. Key missed. And then I was getting 7 years old. 7 years old? And then my son Matthew came home and couldn't get his key in the door because he was carrying groceries. He needs my help. The key is that he missed the lock, the hole, as if he's 7 years old. Just being me, Mom, he says. 7 being the key to alchemy process. Alch, M-E. The alch and me process. The whole, or whole with a W, the entire, that is me. And then he comes out to tell me about the movies he watched last night, which was Casino, which Sharon Stone for me automatically came up, because then I watched a movie the night before last called Cuties, where the little girl showed her crotch online. Okay? All right, so we have Sharon Stone in Casino, opening her legs, and then we have a movie where I had a little girl trying to prove her worth by taking a picture of her crotch and posting it online. The sexy vixen and the innocent victim from Casino and Cuties. Christ's ass on the line, or Christ as in human or humanity, and cut ease or hurt the female. And those are the two. I was just interpreting Casino and Cuties. Casino is Christ as in human, or Christ's ass on the line. And then Cuties is cute ease, or hurt the female, the wound in his spear. The feminine desperate to show you the hole they made, the distorted view. So this was very significant interpretation here again. So again, Christ as in human, the human form, cut the ease and hurt the female, wound with his spear. The feminine then desperate to show you, the masculine, the hole that you made, but then comes up, because of their desperation, their polarity, they end up showing you the distorted view and not really what they want you to see. And Spirit's connecting with me. All right, so then my son came out and was talking about, he had his coffee, and he said, there's nothing like a cup of coffee on Sunday morning. So that's a divine masculine message, because I was just getting the masculine having a cup of coffee in 2 different cards yesterday. And that was at 152 to 53, which is the Magician, and then the Queen of Swords and the Knight of Swords having coffee together. And so I looked up the number 167 from the page that I'd opened, and Mike Pence came up. So right away, Archangel Michael came up, but then I had to look up Pence as well. So when I looked up Pence, it led to Venus and then again to Venus. So it was definitely Venus-based. And Archangel Michael from Mike, and the electric Christ light, and pence, which means pennies or a sum of money, a subunit of the pound or sterling or Irish pound, which I was then interpreting as dog, rod, and Celt, or the warrior. The dog with rod and celt, Archangel Michael, the warrior. 3 pensful, the British coin. 3 pence, or throughpence they're called, as 1/80th a pound of rod sterling was coming up. And that's the, what's the show? And it was just coming up too. Na 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 na. God, the episode of that freaked me out the most was when the sun fell out of orbit and was coming toward the Earth. So that was coming up. I'm just blanking out on the title of the show, but you guys know what I'm talking about. The meaning of pence still coming up here, or 3 old pence sterling. 1 3-pence equals 3 pennies equals 1/4 shilling equals 1/80th a pound. 3 pence equals 9 pennies, or 3/4 a shilling, and 1/80th a pound. So here I was getting these numbers were coming up as, and then I was being guided that 1/80th is, you can't divide 3 into 80, so they were pushing me to 81, which is the end of karma. In the Pythagorean numerology book that I have, the Divine Triangle, that 81 is the end of karma, the end of the life cycle. So you can't divide into 80, so it must be 81, which is then 3 into 81 is 27, which is the Ace of Wands. It is the flame. But also the 3 of 9 pennies is 333, and then 3/4 shilling was coming up. 333 is only 3 of the 4 of 12, which is today's day, the wisdom, because we have 3 times 4 is the wisdom. The 3 to 9, 3, 6, 9, 9 is the ending, but 12 is the transcendence. It's the higher octave of the numerology cycle. So 3 times 9 was coming up as 27, but 3 into 81 is also 27, and 3 into 80 was not quite 27. And here we have the Ace of Wands. So then I was getting the financial reset, that 80 plus 1 equals 81, the end of karma as we know it. Financial reset, 333, 3/4, 12, and then 9 times 9 equals the 81. In the tarot deck, 78 is the last card. In the traditional deck, it's the end of the fool's journey of the 3D dream family, the gate. 79 for me has been coming up as the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And 80, the human dance to the 81 of karmic completion, the completion point. The gold waiting on the other side of the end of the rainbow, the other side of the rainbow, like in The Wizard of Oz. As 3 plus 1 dance, just as I was saying, the 333 is missing the 4th. 3 plus 1 dance of the 80 to Oz, to all, O2, or oxygen. I was just getting oxygen tent. 2 humans breathe as one, plus 81, where the train pulls into the station, stationing at 0 degrees, 0 at 0 degrees, or in other words, completion. 0 point field, Sally Field, the flying nun, with wings on her head and bells on her nose, giving her a running start and a wake-up call. Okay, so Lieb came up. I told you it means love and the love of one's life. And then also, this is from dictionaryreverso.net, Lieb athletic lettering was coming up. So again, the raised lettering or the braille was coming up. And that site was called lieb.com. And it said 3/23/2020, ... Since 1923, we have set the standard for on-field image. All right, so the field image. And then Kobe came up, so of course Kobe Bryant came up, and the Japanese port, which is famous for beef and sake. I was just getting for Christ's sake, making it funny. And then Kobe, which is TripAdvisor, and CNN came up besides the port. Kobe Bryant died at age 41 in the Lakers helicopter crash on January 26, 2020. Where he was one of 9 people in Calabasas, California, and he was born August 23rd, so here's 23 coming up again, in 78. So 23 just came up, and 78 just came up, and 8 came up already. 8 is strength, 23 is the King of Wands, and 78 is the 10 of Pentacles, right? The ultimate dream family in the 3D. And by the way, Kobe Bryant was born in Philadelphia, PA, I'm just outside Philadelphia. And 13 of his daughter came up at the age that she passed away, Gianna, and his jersey coming up as number 24, which is also the end of karma because the omega, the end of the Greek alphabet. And they were showing me that karma is the end of community or in a lower scale karma, whereas the 81 is the end of the world karma, okay? So then Deepak's pages 40 and 41 and 42 were coming up, and the key words of self-awareness, experimentation, and responsibility. So I just had to tell you that because it was really cool. It was coming up here. So very important about the significance between the source, the flame energy, which is normally split into two ways. And they're also giving me the energy that it's in the shift, it's flipping, where it's more about the Christ Sophia coming into the one point, okay, of the divine feminine. And that's why the triangles of the Merkaba were coming up as the masculine triangle being the Christ, and then the two children, one of character and one of consequence, and then the feminines was coming up as the Sophia and the son and the Sarah of the Mary Magdalene daughter lineage, okay? So that was coming up, but also realizing it's not, if it was once love and light, it's not. It's love is the peak, and it's sound and light. Right? The thunder and lightning, the Metatron and Michael. They're trying to show me this over and over again. And the Sophia is the wisdom, the sound, right? The Christ of the light and the Sophia of the wisdom. So this was important to decipher, that the love is the whole, it's not the part. And let's see. Yep, I think that was everything. So then I pulled the cards to see how this came up in the cards for you guys. And it's 41:59, the 11th hour again, just a 42, which is the Two of Cups, the two coming together in love. So I pulled cards for you guys, and I was getting here the Page of Wands, which is the one who's inspired, the young energy. And you notice the teenagers came up in the Deepak book. So here's that teenage boy, right? Excited and inspired. Remember to not get too excited because it's the same extreme polarity as getting anxious the other direction. So you want to tone down your excitement to stay more centered at 0 point. So the underlying energy here came up here, which is coming clean. And underneath it is the Two of Swords, the blind person. I'll show you the card in this deck. So here's the energy of the blind person in this deck, okay? So very much being blinded by the light. And this is being blinded by the light, being in your knowing or pretending not to know, right? They're two polarities. And coming clean about this. Coming clean is the underlying energy here. And then the excitement of being inspired. Just like when I do these code breakings every day, it's exciting for me, so I have to stay tempered to keep my energy balance. And then from the energy deck, the underlying energy is the man holding the heart. Okay, there's the man holding the heart, and that came up yesterday for me too. 45 is the grieving process, the letting go of the past, or loss, regret, guilt, and shame. And then the cards that came out here Metatron comes up, and the Temple Path. So again, the Metatron comes up as the feminine female, right? The feminine male. Because remember, it's the feminine and masculine within each of us. And here's the Temple Path, or the journey that we're on, has to do with the masculine becoming more feminine, expanding his wings. And here's the Sally Field wings, like coming out of his head. And the bells on your nose, when you get little tickles on your nose, that's them. That's like your wings reminding you to stay centered. It's your wake-up call. So here's the expansion of the sixth chakra, the third eye. My explanation here, that it's the pineal is not the third eye. It's the activation of the third eye. But once you get to a certain point above that, because you're above the crown now, for the twins and all the star seeds, you're already from the get-go above the fifth dimension, obviously not perpetually. So you've already got this down, but once you awaken, there's that black hole there in his third eye. You now have extended to the crown and above. So it's not pi anymore of the pineal gland, it's now the phi of the extended energy up. So once you get past the 6th chakra into the crown, they're guiding me that it's not so much of a worry about your pineal gland. It's more based in activation as opposed to having your third eye always open all the time. But that's the guidance I was getting. And if you don't agree with it, that's fine too. But this is the messages I'm getting. And so I hope you like that. I loved getting all this information too. It was a pretty amazing journey they took me on today. So the path. I just want to pull one more quick card. Do I? All right, just one quick one here. All right, so I'm pulling from my angel crystals here. So rose quartz and malachite came up for you guys. Love life or renewed romantic love is here for you. And malachite, which is prosperity. There's a positive shift in your flow of divine support, which definitely relates to what I was just talking about. Rise and be love.